I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I came into BlizzCon with pretty low expectations. A PvE mode wasn't really what I was asking for from the Blizzard developers, but I got a chance to play it, and I gotta say, I was blown away. They didn't let us record our own gameplay, so we're gonna be showing Emong's stream in the background. If you don't know Emong already, what's wrong with you? He's one of the best Twitch streamers we have in the community. His Twitch link will be in the description, you can go check him out. But with the experience I've had, as well as watching the panels and have the developers explain Overwatch 2, I'm gonna break down what we've got coming with the PvE elements of the game, as well as my impressions and evaluations of where it's at. And the number one thing we got to talk about is that it just looks really impressive. It's technically not a new engine, but it's upgraded the original engine they have. So a lot of the player models look much more detailed, and from everybody I've talked to, the feeling of the game just screams Blizzard polish. I was blown away. It felt to me like an old school Blizzard campaign type game, and everything that comes with that, with the cinematics for every mission, the gameplay feeling very tight and responsive, and quite a lot of depth with the opportunities you have to explore the heroes of Overwatch in a variety of different ways. It's a completely separate experience, of course, to the PvP we know and love, but for many people, this will be the premier way to experience Overwatch, and I thought it was a ton of fun. So let's start breaking down some of the things that we were able to learn. Keep in mind with all of this, Overwatch 2 is still being developed, so much of it can change. They're not necessarily tied to any of these ideas, and with that, the game has a feeling of the original launch of Overwatch with the same optimism, hope, and joy that comes with that, where they still can craft what the experience is like. So in the game, there's two ways to play. There's the story mission that is sort of the main campaign. In this, there's set heroes that you can play, but they're still working out how you can put in alternate heroes based on characters that make sense for the story. So for example, in the Rio mission that we got to play at BlizzCon, when the game comes out, you'll be able to sub in characters like Mercy and Genji, who were at the scene, but you won't be able to cross faction lines and have like Widowmaker play with Tracer and Reinhardt. That doesn't make sense, right? But you will be able to do that in the hero missions. And as they described it, the hero missions are sort of like Diablo adventures, and we haven't really seen them explain this yet, other than it's going to be similar to the campaign missions you're used to, but maybe like turned up a notch or a bit more challenging and replayable. And you'll have reasons to replay it because there's kind of RPG mechanics built in as well that we'll go over in a minute. In the game, the characters have all of the abilities you know and love, but they're all altered to fit into the PvE experience. Not only is there inherent changes to the way characters play in PvE, there's the skill trees that were leaked and got confirmed that allow you to level up your character and change how you play. But I'm pretty excited about the different passive characters have, because I was playing Lucio, and what you can do with Lucio is use his boop to knock an enemy into a wall to stun it. And a really fun aspect of this gameplay is that you can combo these things together, right? So up against a tough boss who's got a lot of health and maybe has special abilities that can wreck you, you can sort of like chain your abilities together as a team, where Reinhardt will pin it, then you boop it into the wall and stun it, sort of like a Doomfist punch. And there's a very synergistic and enjoyable gameplay loop, honestly, tied to the fact that these abilities have been reworked and buffed and gives you a lot of options for gameplay. And what'll be fun is sort of crafting your gameplay choices to try to figure out how to get past certain challenges, especially as you get on the harder difficulties and begin to challenge yourself. So any ability that you would think isn't too effective in PvE, for example, they showed Hanzo's recon arrow now gets a buff where whenever you mark a target, the next shot is like a homing arrow that goes through all the marked targets. Because obviously, recon doesn't really matter when you're playing against bots. Sort of like Lucio boops, the crowd control isn't as impactful as it is in PvP. These kinds of aspects, it looks like they're trying to buff to make sense and be very interesting and cool in the PvE context. But there's also an extra way to play where there's going to be items on the map, and they're not too complex, but they do definitely change up the gameplay, where there'll be a chest on the ground, and the four of you can scavenge amongst the loot, almost in a Diablo-esque style, and the loot package looks similar to Borderlands or Apex Legends and games like that. And this will allow each character to have an extra ability, where they either can put down a big healing station, like Soldier's Healing Station times 10 or something, like it's really big, and the team can heal in that. There's a big circular barrier shield that you can put up, which we found to be pretty crucial whenever you need to revive a teammate. There's corrosive grenades, so that even if you're a healer, you can get some offense as well. And there's a bit of an Easter egg in this as well, because there's hidden legendary items on the map. Jeff talked about this and hinted to it on the panel, and right away when me and Eddie were playing, he actually, being a Destiny player, is like kind of searching on the corners of the map, and he did find the legendary item. As soon as you get off the ship, I think you go off to the side, and characters that have mobility can get across onto a bridge somewhere. I forgot how he explained it, but there's a legendary turret item that puts down 3 turrets at once. And you can imagine as you get in harder and harder versions of the PvE, the more crucial these legendary items and knowing where they are will be. But especially on your first playthrough, it's going to be quite the surprise to find these things and be made much more powerful. Speaking of power, that's something that the developers on the panel really got into, and this is why I felt like when I played it, it reminds of old school Blizzard games, because whether you're talking about World of Warcraft, I'm a big Diablo fan as well, feeling powerful and just mowing through lots of enemies with powerful abilities that do interesting things, that's what this game's all about, okay? You can think of it with sort of Diablo-esque gameplay in Overwatch, and it's better than you can imagine. It honestly makes the Archives missions look like rink-a-dink modes that were tossed together over a weekend, right? What we've seen thus far with the one mission, if they could replicate this for a whole game, this feels like a classic Blizzard game. Okay, it's a lot of good things. Let's get to some more information. As far as the size of the game, there's going to be hero missions for all the maps we already have. That's sort of a sly move from the developer's standpoint, where they don't have to develop entirely new maps for everything. Every map we have is going to have a mission dedicated to it, which is quite a lot of content. And as you get through that content, the way that this becomes a bit more interesting is the RPG-esque components that feel a little bit Diablo-light, where you'll want to be leveling up your characters to make them more powerful and handle different situations. This reminded me a lot of how StarCraft 2's campaigns worked, and some of those campaign missions were incredible in my opinion. I love playing StarCraft 2. Overwatch 2 feels a lot like that, where you're going to be moving from mission to mission and selecting different powers and leveling up characters for different types of missions. So for example, you might want to use Bastion and Reinhardt together. Let's face it, probably Orisa if you get to pick her, right? But maybe she's not an option for like holdout missions as they called it. So anytime you're in a horde scenario, for the more difficult hero missions that let you pick any character, you'll want to try to pick the most OP combinations for that specific mission. Or another reason you might want to pick someone else is if maybe you want to level up a character for a mission, or maybe you just have your favorite character as well. There's always going to be that. And with this as well, I need to make a note because I see a lot of comments worried about this. Jeff Kaplan explicitly said the progression systems are only for PvE. PvP, as we're used to, is not getting changed. It's still going to have the simple gameplay where each hero is going to be the same, so nobody's at an advantage or disadvantage based on their kit, other than the fact, of course, the balancing of the game, changing that dramatically, but there's no leveling system coming to the competitive multiplayer. This is only PvE. Keep that in mind. But to talk about some of the specific upgrades that they showed us, they feel really fun, and I remember back to being a teenager playing Blizzard games for the first time, and the first time I saw a barbarian do a whirlwind, my jaw dropped to the floor, and it was like the coolest thing I've ever seen. As a kid growing up with Blizzard games, seeing those powerful abilities got me into gaming, so seeing the same type of treatment be put into Overwatch gets me all warm and fuzzy inside. Some of the things that they've put in is like allowing Reinhardt's Earth Shatter to be in 360 degrees. The epicenter upgrade lets him shatter everybody around him, so you actually can drop off the top rope and just destroy tons of bots. Mei can pop in and out of her icicle in order to freeze everybody around her. Tracer, of course, has the pulse bomb upgrade we knew about, which lets it chain to multiple enemies, or active reload, which reloads your weapon anytime you use an ability, which just allows you to put down an insane amount of DPS. Torb can put down multiple turrets and turn them into flamethrower turrets. Like, these things are pretty nuts, guys. A lot of fun to use. What else? Mei can turn into a snowball and just roll people over. I don't know how that makes any sense, but it looks funny. Genji can throw his dragon blade, which is just incredible, and it's all really fun. We didn't get to play with all of these abilities, but I can imagine what they're like based on playing with the ones we did have access to, and it's just a blast. As the developer said on the panel, the cool thing about this is that with the competitive game, everybody can have a chance to enjoy their heroes. This is something that I've talked about for years, where we all just want to be able to get in the immersion of enjoying the different heroes we love, and with Overwatch only really having competitive elements to it, it can be hard for us to get into that, especially if we're trying to gain our SR, and it can make for a very stressful and somewhat toxic experience with the game, whereas when you have PvE, you can jump in at any skill level, no matter what your main normally is, and have a blast through the RPG mechanics of Overwatch 2, destroying bots, using teamwork to accomplish objectives, and then taking down bigger and badder bosses. The gameplay of all of that, as you probably would have seen thus far, reminds us of like a Destiny Strike or other campaigns that you can think of. It's a very classic feeling game. Borderlands, Diablo 3, it felt very much like that. Few extra points that we want to go over. Jeff made it clear that the engine is upgraded, but it is not a new engine, which is pretty remarkable because it looks very clean and the characters look incredible. He said that the reason why they did it is because just like Batman is a classic character that you follow for years and years and years. He goes through evolutions with the times, and that's what they wanted to do with Overwatch, where they want to sort of upgrade them for the next generation of the game, but also use that as an opportunity to develop where these characters are. Genji now has a hood and sort of has this like outcast look to him, and as you guys probably saw in the opening cinematic for the game, sort of feels like he's a rebel that went into hiding for a while and now is back, and that kind of shows in his aesthetic. Bastion has been hanging around with Torbjorn now, and Torb has upgraded Bastion. He now wears a little hat just like Torb does. So between that and as well actually having a story mode, we're going to dig into the story of Overwatch. And to that degree, I want to emphasize, if the one mission that we have got to play at BlizzCon is the standard, it's going to actually be depth into these different characters and into what's actually going on into the game, which is something we've all kind of complained about. So what I mean is, all of the little things start to add up with the immersion into the game. You know when you're queuing up for a PvP game and you select two characters that have a unique voice line and they sort of have some banter between them? Those moments feel great in Overwatch 1, but they're constant in Overwatch 2 as far as we've seen, because events will happen in the game and there's witty remarks and banter between the characters, so it really lets Blizzard flex their writing muscles that they've been so good at for so many years, right? Blizzard is really good at this stuff, and it shows in the Overwatch 2 gameplay and story elements. There's a lot more said at the panel, but I think it's going to be covered by Liam in his video talking about the release date and updates and whatnot, so I'm going to leave this over to him to cover, and you want to check out that video as well. But just closing remarks on this whole Overwatch sequel, since it's going to be a separate thing away from PvP that you can play as sort of an add-on, I kind of see it as an expansion. They're trying to describe it as a new type of sequel, but I think it makes more sense to the rest of us to see this as Blizzard doing something that's a classic Blizzard move, expanding on the game they already have. And I'm not certain about this, but from what I can tell, if you don't own Overwatch 1 now, but buy the sequel, you get everything. But if you don't want to buy the sequel, anything that they're adding to PvP, you'll still be able to play in Overwatch 1, which is another reason why I believe over the BlizzCon weekend, they've just lowered the price of Overwatch 1, because really what they want you to do is get into all the new content and bring a lot of new players in. And I think it will, because it is legit a fun casual experience, especially when Overwatch PvP has a stale meta. I'm telling you, you're going to have a ton of fun just picking your favorite characters and going destroying some bosses and doing some of these campaign and hero style missions. I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's like having the Archives missions times 50, because it's just a full-on game where you get to play all the heroes that you love without all the stress that the competitive elements of the game can sometimes bring. Those still need attention too, and we'll have more on that soon, and you better bet that we're going to be addressing some of the major concerns the community has for the competitive side of the game as well, so you want to be sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so that you actually get notified when that video goes live. We'll be putting it up ASAP over the weekend. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And while you're clicking everything, check out our Twitter, linked in the description. We should be doing a big creator and fan meetup on Saturday sometime tomorrow. Check out our Twitter for updates on that. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.